Hey everyone! Today we are diving into a fantastic constitutional mystery. It's a legal puzzle from almost 100 years ago that tried to create an unbreakable law, and in the process, it completely changed the way we think about the power of governments.
So the whole thing really boils down to this one incredible question. Can a government create a law that a future government is totally powerless to change? I mean, can you actually forge a political lock that no one can ever pick? It sounds impossible, right? Well, that's exactly what they tried to do.
All right, so let's set the scene. Our story starts back in the 1920s in New South Wales, Australia. And it was a time of some pretty intense political drama and big, sweeping changes.
Now, the big fight was all about this thing called the Legislative Council. This was the upper house of their parliament. But here's the catch. Its members were appointed, not elected. And for the Labour Party, which was all about reform, this unelected council was just a massive roadblock to everything they wanted to do. So naturally, they were dead set on getting rid of it. The government, in power at the time, could totally see the writing on the wall. They were terrified that a future Labour government would get in and just vote the council out of existence. So what was their solution? They decided to create a special constitutional lock to protect it.
Their plan, which they passed into law in 1929, was actually pretty clever. It was a three-step process. See, to get rid of the council, any future bill couldn't just pass through Parliament like normal. No, it would also have to be approved by the people in a public vote, a referendum. They were making it much, much harder to abolish the council on purpose.
But here's the thing about locks. They're only as good as the next person's determination to break them. And just like the old government feared, the locksmiths showed up almost right away. A new government was elected, and they had one clear mission: break that lock.
And what's really wild is how fast this all happened. The lock law gets passed in 1929. The very next year, a new Labour government sweeps into power and immediately tries to smash it. They put forward bills to get rid of the council, and they completely ignore that brand new legal requirement to hold a referendum.
So, you've got this epic showdown, right? On one side, the 1929 Parliament tried to control the future by setting a new rule. On the other side, the 1930 Parliament is arguing, hey, we're the ones elected now. We have the supreme power to do what we want, and that includes ignoring your silly rule. So, who's right?
Well, a fight this big couldn't be settled in Parliament. It ended up in court. Two members of the council that was under threat, one of them a guy named Trethowan, actually sued the government to stop them. And just like that, a political battle turned into a massive legal showdown.
The case put this core constitutional puzzle on trial. I mean, what is more powerful? Is it the right of the current Parliament to make any law it wants? Or is it the specific rules that a past Parliament carefully laid down? That was the fundamental question the courts had to answer.
And the two sides had, completely opposite takes. The government's argument was basically, our power is absolute. No past Parliament can tie our hands, we're in charge now. But Trethowan's side came back with something more subtle. They argued that, yeah, Parliament is sovereign, but that means it has the power to make laws according to the rules. And the 1929 Parliament had just changed the rules of the game.
Now, this case was so important, so fundamental, that it went all the way up through the Australian courts and finally landed in London. It went before the Privy Council, which, at that time, was the highest court of appeal for the entire British Empire.
Just think about that for a second. The fate of a major part of an Australian state parliament was being decided on the other side of the planet. The stakes were just astronomically high. So, what did they decide? Well, the Privy Council sided with Trethowan. They said yes, the 1929 Parliament absolutely did have the power to create that lock. The referendum was a totally legit, legally binding part of the process. The lock held. So how did the court get there? Well, their whole argument hinged on this brilliant legal idea called manner and form. They said, look, the 1929 law didn't tell future parliaments what they could do. It didn't forbid them from abolishing the council. All it did was change how they had to do it. It changed the manner and form. For this one specific issue, the very definition of parliament had been expanded. It wasn't just the two houses anymore. It was the two houses plus the voters. So why are we talking about some dusty old case from 90 years ago? Because this ruling sent shockwaves through constitutional law that we still feel today. It established a hugely important principle. And that principle is what we call manner and form. It's the key to this whole puzzle. It's the idea that a parliament can entrench certain laws, protecting them from being easily repealed by requiring a special procedure, like a referendum or maybe a two-thirds majority vote. And this case, the Trethowan case, is what proved that these kinds of protections are legally enforceable.
When you boil it all down, the takeaway is actually beautifully simple. Even a supreme, all-powerful parliament has to follow its own rulebook. And if a previous parliament had the power to write a new chapter in that rulebook, well, the current one has to play by those rules. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question for our own time. This case proved that some laws can be made unbreakable without a special key. And that forces us to ask, what ideas, what fundamental rights or democratic principles are so important that we might want to protect them with a similar lock, keeping them safe from the political whims of any one government?